What's up, guys? My name's Brandon, and welcome back to Apple Weekly. In this episode, we're going to discuss even more iOS 18 features and changes. We're going to talk about why Apple is making a foldable iPhone, the 2 reasons the iPhone 17 might be amazing, car makers are ditching CarPlay, a crazy AirTag story, and more. And as always, if you want to continue getting these Apple Weekly episodes on a weekly basis, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below so you don't miss next week's episode. Okay, so let's start with even more iOS 18 features and changes. So this week we surprisingly got iOS 18 beta 4. The public beta 2 was not released just yet. That'll come out early next week and we'll talk about that in a moment. But we got a surprise release this week from Apple, but unfortunately it did not contain any new Apple Intelligence features. However, there was an Easter egg in iOS 18 beta 4 that I want to show you guys because it is still here and you can also reproduce this yourself, and it indicates that Apple Intelligence is coming very soon. We could even see it in beta 5 or beta 6. So what you want to do is go into your settings and then go to Siri and take a look up top. So where it says settings right now on my screen, keep looking there. So I'm going to go into Siri and you see that it said Apple Intelligence for a split second and then it just changed to saying Siri. Now you can reproduce this by force closing out of your settings. So if you force close out of that, go back in, and then we go down here to Siri, take a look up top. You can see it said Apple Intelligence in Siri. So you could do that for yourself and you can see, and that indicates that we are getting pretty close to seeing at least some Apple Intelligence features. Now we're not going to see the new Siri 2.0 until 2025, so we're not going to see a new Siri, but this section could be updated to have some Apple Intelligence, features and toggles. So Apple loves to tease us, and we've seen multiple kind of Easter eggs like this before, but this is the first one where you can actually reproduce it every single time. And while we're on the topic of Apple Intelligence, I do just need to elaborate a little bit on what I mean by Apple Intelligence coming soon, because there still seems to be a lot of confusion surrounding this. So Siri 2.0, the upgraded version of Siri, we're going to have, context. Siri is going to be able to understand context. Siri is going to be able to understand what's on your screen. That feature is coming in 2025. That was confirmed by Bloomberg. However, other Apple Intelligence features are going to be coming this year before iOS 18 gets publicly released, which means we are going to see those features in the betas, which is why we could see Apple Intelligence as soon as beta 5 or even beta 6. And not that it was needed, but we did also see confirmation from Mac Rumors, who reached out to Apple and they confirmed that Apple Intelligence will be coming in a future beta. So that is exciting, and that really has me looking forward to these future iOS 18 betas. But as far as beta 4 goes, there's nothing new in there aside from that Easter egg. Now we did also get some insight from 9to5Mac about Apple Intelligence and how it's going to be able to generate playlist artwork. So they found code in iOS 18 beta 4 that shows Apple has been working on a new feature that will let users create playlist artwork for Apple Music with Apple Intelligence. And they say that strings suggest that there will be a create image button when editing a playlist, and this button will invoke Image Playground, which is part of the Apple Intelligence features. And Image Playground is also going to be related to Genmoji as well. So you're going to be able to create emojis based on the text that you put in there. I would imagine it's going to be very similar when creating artwork for playlists in Apple Music. Okay, so now let's talk about some more iOS 18 features, not just speculation and what's coming in the future. So the first thing I noticed here in beta 4, and this is not exclusive to beta 4, but it's a feature I have not mentioned here on the channel just yet, and that's if you are in the Photos application and you're on a photo that was added to an album. If you go to the photo in the main, Photos page and you swipe up, you will see down at the bottom, there's now a indicator as to which album that photo is in. So it shows included in iOS 18 tidbits. That is the name of my album, and you can tap on that and it will take you in to that album. And if the photo is included in 2 different albums, it will say that it's included in 2 albums, and you can tap on that and it will show which 2 albums or more it is included in. So that is a nice new feature here in iOS 18 that really helps with kind of seeing and organizing your photos. There's also now an option to hide completed reminders in the calendar application. Also in the reminders application, if we go into one of our lists here, we now have an undo button up in the top left. So an undo and a redo button. So if you deleted something and you didn't want to delete that reminder, or you didn't want to mark that reminder as complete, you can now go back. You can undo and redo straight from the reminders application, which is nice. That's going to save me a lot of time because I always accidentally complete reminders by tapping on it without meaning to. Now we also have a change to the flashlight animation. So you know this animation here in the dynamic island, which is awesome. That has now come to the iPhone 15 and 15 Plus. So before, this was exclusive for the Pro model iPhones, but now it's available on the 15 and 15 Plus since they do have the dynamic island up there. Also new in iOS 18 Beta 4 is this new icon here for iPhone mirroring. So it has a slightly new look here with Beta 4, and that of course is when you are mirroring your iPhone to macOS Sequoia. So also new with iOS 18 Beta 4 and the latest macOS Sequoia beta is that you can resize the size of your iPhone when it's being mirrored to your Mac, which is a great addition. And I mentioned this in my What's New video, but I'm also loving the fact that widgets now change based on the device theme and not the icon theme. So before, if you were to put your, if I go to put my icons in light mode, you'll notice that my widgets do not change colors. They stay in dark mode no matter what. So even if I put it in automatic, you can see they stay in dark mode even though I'm currently in light mode. And that's because it now goes based off of the system theme and not the icon theme. So if I go ahead and turn off dark mode and go back, you can see that my widgets change to light mode. And if I go to dark mode, they change to dark mode. So I love how they follow the system theme now. So yeah, this update has some nice additions to it, but it's not perfect. We actually have quite a few bugs here with this latest iOS 18 beta, and probably the most I've seen since beta 1. Now, I do still think it's more stable and the performance and battery life are better than beta 1, but there's just a few minor inconveniences and bugs that I've noticed with this update that really impact me on a daily basis. So let's talk about a few of those. So this is where I was going to mention the major bugs that I was having in iOS 18 beta 4, but that's when Apple out of nowhere, late on a Friday, decided to re-release beta 4 for registered developers. So I was not expecting that, and you can see this is the build number right here. It ends with a K. That is technically the latest beta as of now, and this fixed pretty much every bug that I was facing beforehand. There weren't a ton, but there were two major ones that were fixed with this re-release, and if you watched my What's New video, you already know those, so I'm not going to go too deep into it, but the main issue it fixed was the audio playback bug, where if you tapped your device to wake it up, it would pause audio playback, and also when you unlock your device, the brightness would go all the way down to 0. So that has also been fixed here with the re-release of beta 4. So really the only other issues remaining are the issues with CarPlay and connectivity in terms of cell connectivity. But the volume bug and the brightness bug were by far the most widespread issues with beta 4. So it's good to see those resolved. But aside from those issues, the performance is not bad. The performance is not terrible here in beta 4. I did just run a Geekbench test and we scored a 2828 on the single core and a 6974 on the multi-core. So you can see how that compares to previous runs. The single core is good and the multi-core is good as well. It's higher than our initial run here with beta 4, but you can see that, it's still not as good as some of the earlier betas, especially down here on July 8th, where we have a 2849 and a 7006. So performance, you can't always tell everything from these Geekbench scores, but I will say the performance does feel a tad bit better than it did in beta 3 and beta 3.5, the re-release. But those bugs are still annoying. I'm not going to count that as performance because those aren't really related to performance. Those are just more UI issues and just different issues like that. But the overall raw performance is pretty solid here. Now, as far as battery life goes, this surprised me. I was not expecting battery life to be better than the previous betas. We haven't really seen a dramatic increase in battery life really at all throughout this iOS 18 beta cycle, but I think that iOS 18 beta 4 might be the very first time I've really noticed a difference in battery life. So you can see my charts here. Battery life is better in beta 4. I've noticed it without even looking at the charts. I could just tell that I was lasting a little bit longer with beta 4 compared to every previous beta. Now, it's still not as as good as iOS 17. Of course, we're still in a beta, an early beta at that. So we should see, progressive improvements over time. But I think that now that the public beta is out, Apple is really trying to prioritize the battery life over things like, features maybe at this point, which is why we might not have Apple Intelligence just yet. That could put some wear on the battery life. We'll have to wait and see, but battery life for me on beta 4 is better. Let me know what what your experience is like with battery life here in beta 4 as well, down in the comments below. Okay, so now let's talk about what to expect next from Apple. So since we got a re-release of beta 4 on Friday, which again was a big surprise, we are going to see the next public beta next week. So I would expect to see iOS 18 public beta 2, so the second beta for public beta testers. You should see that next week, either on Monday the 29th or on Tuesday the 30th. Now, after that, I would expect to see Apple release iOS 18 Beta 5 on the week of August 5th. They've been releasing them on Mondays and Tuesdays, so it really could come on the 5th or the 6th. And then I would expect the public beta to get released shortly after that. And then hopefully after beta 5, which hopefully we get Apple Intelligence in beta 5, but after that, hopefully we do switch over to a weekly release schedule. That's what Apple has done in the past, so it is something that we can look forward to. Now, we are going to see the final public release of iOS 18 in September. My guess as of now is going to be September 16th, so we still have quite a ways to go. So just over a month to go before iOS 18 gets released to the public. So that's plenty of time to beta test these Apple Intelligence features. And again, once they actually get released to the public, they are still going to be technically in beta. So we're going to be like the beta testers for a beta feature once we get those in these iOS 18 betas. So put a comment down below. How many times did I just say beta? Now, I did also want to cover a few other software related stories here. So first off, we did have a update to the Apple Sports application. So this is Apple's new application for following sports. So you can see it's version 1.5, and we now have Follow Live as every MLS and Liga MX club competes for the league's cup. And then we also have an indicator to MLB box scores for pitcher wins, losses, and saves. So some minor tweaks there to Apple Sports. Now, we also saw Apple update the Maps application for the Paris Olympics. So if you go to Paris in your Apple Maps application and you go to these specific locations, you can see some hyper detail here. It looks so awesome. I mean, look how far in you can go here. So we can kind of go around and see inside of the stadium right here. It is just awesome. I mean, you can even go into this one as well and see some of these details. It's amazing what Apple does with Apple Maps, and I don't know how anybody can say that Google Maps is better than Apple Maps when it comes to the design and the aesthetics, because this is just amazing. And speaking of Apple Maps, it just launched on the web this week for the first time ever. So it now works in English, and it works with Safari and Chrome on the Mac and iPad, and Google Chrome and Edge on Windows PCs. Now, this is currently in public beta, so features like look around and 3D effects will be added in the coming months, as will different languages and different browsers. So Firefox, you should see that eventually. And I think this is great because the Apple Maps application on Mac is just not good at all. And also this is great for Windows users to finally use Apple Maps. Like if you didn't have any Apple products and you wanted to try out Apple Maps, you couldn't do so on a Windows PC before, but now that Apple has launched this on the web, you're able to access it from your Windows PC. So it just makes Apple Maps more accessible to the masses, which we love to see. Okay, so now let's move on to the latest Apple news. And we have to start with the fact that Apple is actually making a foldable phone. Now, I know we've heard rumors about a foldable iPhone coming for years now, but now we have a report that says Apple is actually moving forward with the project. So this report comes from DigiTimes, and they said that initially Apple was set to launch a foldable iPad to gauge the market reaction, but now Apple has adjusted its plans and may introduce the iPhone as its first foldable product. Now, they say that the foldable iPhone is rumored to come as early as 2026, and it's said to have a top-down folding design. So that's going to be similar to Samsung's Galaxy Z Flip series and not the Z Fold series. And they said that earlier this year in 2024, Apple began R&D on this device and signed a panel supply contract with Samsung. So this is big news for Apple. Of course, it's not confirmation that the iPhone is actually coming in 2026. It could come at a later date. That is just the earliest date possible. But this is big news, I think, especially for the Chinese market. And I think that's a big reason why Apple is going to push out this iPhone Fold earlier than expected, is because the sales of iPhones in China are really, slowing down. They have been for the past couple of years. And I think this is going to be a great boost for iPhone sales in China because foldables are much bigger in the Chinese market than they are in the US market. So now let's move on to some news about CarPlay. And let me start by asking you a question. Would you buy a new car in 2024 that is not a Tesla if it did not have CarPlay support? So would you buy a car that did not support CarPlay? And this is excluding Tesla. Let me know in a comment down below. And the reason I asked that is because Rivian's CEO just said and kind of explained more about why they are not going to be adding CarPlay to Rivian vehicles. So Rivian CEO compared Rivian adopting CarPlay to Apple choosing to run Windows instead of developing its own in-house iOS and macOS alternatives. And he says that CarPlay is unable to control certain parts of the car, so that's where Rivian's own in-house software could thrive. And he specifically mentions that by using their software instead of CarPlay, you can do things like open the front trunk without leaving the application. And he said that they'll eventually add CarPlay's most desirable features on an a la carte basis. Now that sounds great, that sounds fine, and I love a forward-thinking CEO. I have no, bad things to say about that. However, we have to be realistic here. This is not going to work, in my opinion. Like, there's a 1% chance this is going to work because, multiple reasons. Number one, you cannot access Google Maps or Waze in a Rivian car. You have to use their own default navigation, which is not great. Also, if you want to access Spotify or any of your other music streaming platforms, you have to pay $15 a month to even get access to those. Now, of course, you can still play your music over Bluetooth, but the point is you still need to pay that subscription fee if you want access to a lot of the basic features, which only Tesla at this point has been able to get away with. And I think Tesla is the exclusion here because they have such a big and loyal fan base that they can really get away with anything at this point. But I think for Rivian and other automakers, it's really, really tough, if not impossible, to compete with CarPlay. So yeah, I don't think it's going to work out for anybody unless you're Tesla, but that's just my take. I could be wrong. Let me know in a comment down below what your thoughts are on this and if you would buy a car without CarPlay or not. Okay, so now we have to talk about the iPhone 17. I know I hate talking about future iPhones, especially the ones that are not coming this year, but I had to make an exception for this story because the iPhone 17 lineup looks insane. It looks like it's going to be like 2025 looks like it's going to be the best year for iPhones in a very long time because number one, we have the iPhone SE set to launch in the spring, which is going to look like the iPhone 15. It's going to have an OLED display, a lot of crazy features on the iPhone SE, but the iPhone 17 also looks amazing for really two main reasons. So according to several reports and the latest coming from Ice Universe, Apple plans to discontinue the Plus model in 2025 and introduce a new Slim model, which will be the new highest end iPhone, even more expensive than the Pro Max. So Ice Universe posted the alleged specs on Weibo, and the first thing you'll notice is that every iPhone in the iPhone 17 lineup has an LTPO display, which means 120 hertz. So even the base model iPhone 17 looks like it's going to have 120 hertz as the refresh rate, and it's going to cost $800. So it looks like 6.3 inches for the 17 and 17 Pro, and then for the 17 Pro Max, 6.9 inches, and then the iPhone 17 Slim, 6.65 inches, so probably 6.7 inches, and that's going to be approximately $1,299, so $1,300. And he also says that the 17 Pro series will be the first iPhone with 12 gigabytes of RAM and 3 48 megapixel cameras. And he says that the iPhone 17 Slim or Ultra, whatever it ends up being called, is going to be a completely redesigned ultra-thin model released after 8 years of iPhone in 2017. So I don't really see Apple calling the highest end iPhone a slim phone. I think it's much more likely to be called the iPhone 17 Ultra, but regardless of what it's going to be called, the specs and all the leaks surrounding it sound amazing. Now, I'm not too sure how many people are going to pay, a base $1,300 for an iPhone. That is a lot, especially if it's not like a foldable or anything crazy, but I'm really excited for this. We've not really seen anything like this in a while for the iPhones. Like the fact that every model is going to have a 120 hertz display, that alone is a big deal. And then we also have this potential Ultra iPhone coming next year as well. So I'm really excited to see what Apple does for the iPhone 17 lineup next year. Now, speaking of the iPhone 17 lineup and the iPhone SE4 that are coming next year, they're also said to be the first iPhones to use Apple's in-house 5G modem. So this comes from Ming-Chi Kuo, and he says Apple is accelerating accelerating its move away from reliance on Qualcomm. In 2025, 2 new iPhone models will ditch Qualcomm's 5G chips and adopt Apple's in-house 5G chips, the iPhone SE4 and the ultra-slim iPhone 17. So this new 5G chip from Apple could be really great at improving 5G speeds and just overall connectivity, which has been an issue ever since 5G was introduced into the iPhone. And let me just remind you that these are just rumors. Like, things can change, things will change. So if you were set on getting an iPhone 16, and if you want to get an iPhone 16 later this year, get your iPhone 16. Don't wait for the iPhone 17 just based off of rumors. And then finally, just as tradition here on the channel, let's talk about another crazy AirTag story. This time, a man in Texas who owns an exterior business noticed that his materials kept getting stolen at new construction home sites. The materials were stolen on 3 separate occasions in the past few months. So what did he do? He bought some AirTags, of course, and he put them on top of a bundle of materials. He also set up a camera to see the thieves in action, and sure enough, come 6 in the morning, the thieves were back. So the 2 women thieves loaded up their truck with the stolen goods and took off. Now, since the man had an AirTag hidden on the materials, he was able to track them down to Houston, and he filed a police report. Shortly after, he gave police the address of the goods, and they located 2 women at a chop shop in Houston where they were selling the materials. And who were those 2 women? A mother and daughter duo, because nothing screams quality family time like committing a crime together. Anyways, they were arrested and charged, but I'm sure this will not be their last time committing a mother and daughter crime together, which helps them bond. You know, that's just how they bond together. We'll just go with that. So that's it for this week's episode. Hit that like button, and I'll see you next week.